Excited to share my new friend Lauri with you all today. So, as you guys know, this podcast is about being authentic to yourself, and Lauri just aligns so well with kind of finding your best self and letting yourself get through any roadblocks, really, like to get to your most authentic self. So, she's a trauma-informed supervised coach who supports clients in pursuing their soul's deepest desires and passions. So she specifically works with creatives, but everyone can learn, I think, and be inspired by what you're going to talk about today and just your knowledge and experience in overcoming self-judgment, anxiety, fear. I know that's a lot of the things we talk about here too, is just pushing through those things, feeling confident to move through it, even if you're not ready, and addressing anything that's holding you back. So I'm really excited to talk about it. And I think the biggest thing that I want to kind of start with is about the importance of being gentle with yourself, letting yourself have these feelings, letting yourself get in touch with your soul and your soul's purpose. So, welcome. And can you tell us a little bit more about just you and on more of a personal level, like what got you into this stuff and what is your number one goal when you work with clients?
Yeah. Wow. I'm just like sitting here. I'm like, oh, I'm excited for this conversation. I
Oh,
love all
great,
of the
great.
above. So, me, my story. I always say that the reason why I do what I do and like why I'm willing to get vulnerable and authentic online to reach my clients and also in client sessions like going deeper and sharing my vulnerability as like such a big part of what I do. Like you would not believe how much of a coaching session is just normalizing and validating what someone is feeling and letting them know they're not alone in those feelings. And so for me, it was always the mission was to be that person that I always needed and didn't always know that I needed, and that now I can be for myself. And to give that gift to everyone else is like my
Yeah.
mission to make you realize that like you are so much more wildly capable than you give yourself credit for. Like, if you could meet little me and she could be sitting here with us, you would not believe how much like little Lauri had to overcome to get here.
Mhm.
And that is always like my biggest inspiration. I've been on this healing journey for over 20 years. I was like, quote unquote, diagnosed with anxiety, like a generalized anxiety disorder, when I was only 8 years old.
Wow.
I was like, it was pretty obvious even earlier. I was really struggling with anxiety and emotional regulation. And so I was in and out of therapy since that time. And so I really credit like all the everything I've learned has been like the foundation block of doing the work I do. And then, you add on supervision and trainings and trauma information trainings, and like that's the next layer. But truly, like the foundation of my work is my own experience. And so I got here I was actually completely asleep to my own soul's desires and dreams. I followed the conventional route. You graduate high school, you go to university, and I just kind of took something I was interested in. And I just was like, well, and it was just one thing after the other. And I just started kind of following this path. I went to grad school for public relations, like something I wasn't even really interested in, but thought, okay, this will help me get a better job. Like it was always this motivation with something external. It took me going through a couple like bad jobs in marketing to realize like I really didn't like working in a corporate setting at all. It didn't really work for me. It started to get so bad for me that I was having like chronic panic attacks at my desk. And I was like, okay, this isn't sustainable. I took some time off, went back to therapy, and started my own business in order to be more honoring my needs, my mental health. And it's like that was even before my spiritual awakening that led me to this work. It's just like I then started a copywriting business, which is how I kind of entered the online space, started mentoring copywriters, and then realized I love doing this. I love the coaching aspect. And it just kept like peeling back these layers And I would say it all really came to a head last year. That's when I went through trauma myself. I survived a fatal fire, and that was like the wake up call. That was like, okay, life is short. Um, I need to be living my truth. I need to be pursuing it. And so I started pursuing coaching more and more, but still kind of keeping copywriting going.
Mhm.
And then it's like the universe kept like shaking life up for me. And like this year, um, my mom actually had a really critical health episode, and she's now in treatment. And that was like the second wake up call. That was like, life is so fragile, so short. And that's when I fully just leaned into this coaching more and more and more. And ever since I've done that, like, I have never felt more authentic in my marketing, more aligned. It feels effortless to share my message. And so I know that was kind of a long, like, feel free to edit that down, because that was a lot. Like, I really struggle when people are like, tell us your story, like, and how you got here, because like my partner and I were reflecting on it a couple like last week, where it's like I've pivoted 3 times just in the online space in order to get closer to where I need to be. And I want to normalize that, because that's part of being an entrepreneur
Yeah,
is
absolutely. Yep.
is constantly evolving and shifting until you get closer to A, what you most desire to offer, but B, what people really want and need. And I needed to go through a lot of these shifts in order to even clarify my own coaching program and message. Right. And it's like, so pivoting and shifting and evolving is actually a really healthy and good thing. And as a creative, and I think earlier in my business journey, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's actually so I don't think I realized how much we have in common. I went through quite a few jobs and got my bachelor's degree, was going to go back for master's programs, and none of that really worked out. I became a copywriter. And I still do copywriting. And I started as that, and then I did social media management. And I think I am like you, finally in this space where I feel like this is what I'm meant to do, and like this podcasting. And it's been so fun so far. And I am a creative person. I'm like the type of person that I think you would work with. And it really did take a long time, and kind of accepting that it's okay to make those changes, and accepting that your even just your interests can change and your goals can change, and you're not just on a linear, trajectory. You can definitely move and change and grow, and a lot of it comes from just not caring what people think and getting over those like blocks. And I also want to say I can't even begin to express how sorry I am for all the things that you have gone through, and a fire. I can't even imagine that, but I can see how that can really impact you, as like life is short, and just kind of giving you that wake up call you said. So I'm so sorry that you went through that.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it's actually like a year and a month to the date that that happened. And of course it was like traumatic, but I honestly believe that as a space holder and like a coach, like, I thought I had lived through some difficult things. And I thought I could hold space, but when that happened, it gave me a whole nother level of empathy, um, and ability to hold space for darkness. Like, after that happened, I had some clients coming to me with really dark and heavy experiences, loss of a parent suddenly, things like this, that I just was like, if I hadn't lived through that, not saying they're equitable in any way, like, but just like, if I hadn't lived through something so traumatic and disruptive, like, I don't know if I could hold the space that I do the way that I do now.
Yep.
So there always is a layer of meaning to it, even in the darkness. And I didn't see that at first, but it's funny because like even within weeks of it happening, I knew that there was a lesson. Like I was getting signs that there was going to be a lesson from this.
That's so great that you were able to use that and you looked for those signs, because I think it's easy to get entrenched in kind of the just terrible side of all of that. And it is terrible, but pretty much everything that anybody listening is going through, there is a way to branch off of it into a more positive light, get something from it, learn from it, put the amount of sadness you got back out as joy and happiness and helping towards others and giving support. And yeah, I just can't even begin to express how crazy that is that you had to go through that. And how thankful I know so many of us are that you decided to go this route and find like the good and to help other people do the same thing. So that's just so awesome. I know that you mentioned that you really like to talk about, and you've kind of alluded to it already, like your spirituality and mindset, and that's big for me. Things that I talk about. I kind of realized the last couple years how it's okay if I don't believe in like God in the typical way, like Christianity, Catholicism, like, or how I was presented these things at a younger age. I kind of didn't think about anything to take that place, if that makes sense. I kind of thought that or
Yeah.
nothing. And then once I was introduced to, spirituality and everything, I'm like, okay, this actually clicks for me. This makes sense for me. Like, I know something is out there. I know that there is good out there that like is helping me get through this life and a purpose. And I'm just curious, like, how much of that leads you? Like, what do you look for these signs every day? Do you get in tune with the universe every day? Like, how does it impact your life?
I'm laughing because you said we have a lot in common, and I feel like that was like exactly how I felt
Yeah.
about like I didn't grow up religious, but
Mhm.
like in a bigger like sense, like a deeper like traditional family sense I did. Like like we celebrate Christmas, but not really religious. But I was christened, those types of things, but we never
Yeah.
really like went to
Yeah.
church or
Me too.
anything.
Me too. Yeah.
And then I never really resonated with it. And then I, like you, was like, well, no, this or nothing kind of thing. And I just remember sitting with this friend in university, and she had been raised very religious. She wasn't anymore, but she identified as spiritual. And I was saying, I just don't get it. I don't get what God is. And she was like, God is love. It's all around us. And I remember being like, just so like this wall that was like, no, that doesn't make sense. No, 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 no. And then it's funny because when I went through like my corporate I basically burnt out from corporate. Like I said, took some time off. And it was like I was having I would call them spiritual awakenings. I didn't know it at the time, but I was like at the tail end of that job into taking that time off. I remember just sitting on the subway and looking around, and everyone looking like, for lack of a better word, like uninspired and like drained of life. Like everyone just looked so unhappy. And I was like, I, in my body, feel 42 years old and I'm 24 years old. Like, what is like, this is not, maybe I was a bit older than that. But I was like, this is not how I want my next 20 years to look. And I would say that was kind of the beginning of the spiritual awakening, in that I began to be open to something else, a different possibility from this checkbox of steps that I was following. Um, I began to see things a bit differently. And then I started doing a lot of healing work. And I like was reading a lot of Brene Brown.
Yeah.
And at that point, she was really big for me. I read like all her books back to back. And then I started to get like, it's like that was like the first layer. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, but I want to know like more behind that. Like, I want to go deeper. And then I binged all of Gabby Bernstein's books. So it was just like almost I fell into this self study, and I began to just meditate more and do yoga more and um, begin to become more open. And I reflected on like times in my life where I had spiritual signs that I had been shut off to. And I realized there had been this part of me who'd always felt this way to some extent, but it wasn't really accepted in the society I was in.
Yeah.
You know, the witch wound was real for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I can, you know, it's that woo-woo stuff. And I think that's kind of one of the things I want to get out of this chat is, I mean, first, do you